Before I get into the meat of this video, I just want to give you guys the disclaimer that I am pretty bullish on AI, but I do think there's a bubble, right? And it's the second half of that statement that I'm going to focus on during this video, during this stream. And I know you guys might be disagreeing with me, but especially if you're bullish on AI. But let me bring some facts to the case. Let me back this up with some evidence. Case in point. Exhibit A is the Stargate Project. If you're not familiar with the Stargate Project, it's supposed to be the infrastructure that is going to power the AI revolution that we are embarking on. It is going to be a bunch of data centers across the US, in the Middle East, because this is a global enterprise. This is a global initiative. It isn't just a US-centric initiative. Anyway, a bunch of data centers running ice-cold NVIDIA GPUs that are going to be positioned around the world at strategic locations. And it is slated to cost about $500 billion, close to $500 billion worth of an investment that is going to be made. And there's going to be an immediate investment of $100 billion just right off the bat, right? So before I talk more about the Stargate Project, I do want to sort of draw parallels to the other big bubble that made a lot of people in tech lose their jobs. And that was the dot-com bubble bursting in the early 2000s, right? The only difference here, though, not the only difference, but one of the key differences here is that the dot-com bubble wasn't really an expensively inflated bubble, right? You definitely needed infrastructure to bring about the internet. You needed racks and racks of servers. You needed data centers. You needed actual physical databases to support all of the internet. And then you needed the servers that were serving you content across the world to be hosted somewhere. And you absolutely need hardware. You need ice-cold machines. Definitely not GPUs. It's not very computationally expensive to cache pages, especially static pages, and then serve pages and maybe perform some queries based on user needs. Like, no matter how big the data set is, you're not going to use GPUs. You're not going to use expensive chips to do these computations. But you're definitely going to need the infrastructure for the cloud, the hardware infrastructure for the cloud. And it's estimated that to do it globally in the late 1900s and early 2000s, it took anywhere between maybe tens of billions of dollars to maybe $100 billion, right? So even though that was a bubble, and a bubble that did pop, compared to the AI bubble, it was maybe 1/5 the size of the investment involved. And this has been, you know, it's minuscule. Not minuscule, like it's meaningfully smaller than the AI bubble that we're experiencing right now. But I do think, I'm still pretty bullish on AI. I think it's going to bring about it's going to unlock so many capabilities for the human race. It's going to unlock a lot of value. It's going to use data to unlock a lot of value. It's going to bring a degree of personalization to people that we haven't experienced before. It's going to make searching for information easier than ever before. All of those are very amazing unlocks. But even the main person that is carrying the banner for AI, Sam friggin' Altman, has owned up to the fact that there is a bubble in AI. He said that investors are throwing money at maybe 2-3-person startups who founded a company just because they have an idea, and now they're running with the idea, and they're building wrappers on top of wrappers, and they're getting away with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investments. A lot of these investments, and this isn't me saying it, this is Sam Altman saying it, a lot of these investments aren't going to pay off. Right? The investors aren't going to be happy. I mean, maybe the founders are going to be the winners here because they got the money, they built out a company, and if that company didn't work out, at least they have that on their resume to show for. That's great experience. You got invested by, like Andreessen Horowitz or whatever the big name VC firms that are trigger happy with AI investments right now are. But who are the investments in the AI infrastructure project Stargate? Let's talk about that for a bit. Because no matter what happens, these guys are going to come out the clear winners. Even if the bubble implodes, once you've built out the infrastructure, once you've delivered on the hardware for the project, you've taken the money and you've gone left. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I do think a global infrastructure like this, if it's done correctly, it's going to be very valuable. I don't think all the compute power the GPU-backed compute power should be localized to the US, right? So let's talk about the Stargate project. We've talked about the costs about the project already. Let's talk about the players involved. Obviously, I don't even have to tell you this, but NVIDIA is a big player in this space. That is because NVIDIA has the best chips, the best GPUs in the world right now. And they have the best software framework supporting these GPUs. And the CUDA framework is adopted by research institutions and companies around the US, right? There's a very big moat that NVIDIA is working with in terms of GPUs and the associated GPU software. So it's a no-brainer that NVIDIA is going to be providing the GPU powerhouse for this $500 billion project. Cisco, you know it for security, you know it for providing the webcam infrastructure for your offices and whatnot, but they're also absolute goats when it comes to networking. And networking is going to be a pretty big deal because there's going to be a lot of wired hookup that's going to send the data that is being generated and the payloads that are going to be shuttled around the globe come inference time that will need proper networking infrastructure to be served with as little latency as possible. And Cisco's been doing this for decades. So Cisco is going to be the networking partner, setting up the wires and making sure the data moves around as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then you have MGX, which is the UAE-based partner that is going to be responsible, that is going to be overseeing the production of the Stargate's facilities in the UAE. Again, I've mentioned this before, the UAE is extremely strategic as a location for setting up some of the infrastructure for Project Stargate because it is so centrally located. This is a global initiative. There has to be a partner that is centrally located. And UAE is going to pick up the baton there. And the financer for this project is going to be mostly SoftBank, Masayoshi-san. And I know Masayoshi-san isn't the most happy about, maybe letting go of a lot of the shares that he owned of NVIDIA from the early ages. Jensen Huang ribs him from time to time about how he could have been like Masayoshi-san at one point, SoftBank was the biggest shareholder for NVIDIA at one point. NVIDIA is the most expensive, most valuable company in the world right now. So at some level, Masayoshi-san must feel like, hey, I have kind of dropped the ball on this AI investment. Let me dig in deeper. Let me not miss another opportunity. So it kind of does make sense that SoftBank is the chief financier of the Stargate project. But the cost for this project, the sort of cost piece is what really confounds me. And it makes me think that, okay, maybe the infrastructure setup is justified, but there is a lot of money flowing into AI development. Some of these are going to startups that are just providing thin-level services, wrappers on top of wrappers, and that is what's inflating the bubble. But the Stargate project gives you a sense of the sheer amount of scale of money that's being poured into this. By comparison, the entirety of the Apollo project, which was like the entire space program of the US that sent astronauts to the moon, we sent a vessel made of metal. We shot it up into space and made it land on the moon. And all of the training for the astronauts, the R&D to come up with the shuttles, the test launches, everything cost less than $300 billion. So, I mean, yes, we're mission driven. I mean, this is an extremely important mission, setting up Project Stargate, but the scale of cost here is a bit mind-boggling. Anyway, I do think there's an AI bubble. Plenty of people think there's an AI bubble, but that's no reason to think that AI is useless. It's not like NFTs. I don't think it's like meme coins coming out left and right. This is different from blockchain. There's clear utilities in unlocking value. So I am a believer in the capabilities of AI, but there absolutely is a bubble. Anyway, thank you for